Welcome to Failed Forward, a podcast for professionals who are wondering, how the hell did I get here?
Join your host, Rachel Durkin, and me, Donna Miller, as we discuss the messy, bumpy, and often unattractive journey to success.
After all, if it isn't hard to do, is it really worth doing? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Failed Forward, the blah, blah, blah.
Perfect.
This is how we
The
go.
podcast for those of us wondering what the hell is going on or how the hell did I get here? My name is Rachel Durkin. I'm with Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are a web marketing, branding, and sales enablement agency that specializes in working with clients with a complex sale. So if you have a sales team that requires a human interaction to close a deal, we can build a marketing to sales infrastructure that supports that sales team in increasing the number of qualified meetings they're having and improving their closing rate. And thank God I'm done talking. Donna. I am joined each week by Donna Miller, my wonderful co-host. Donna, introduce yourself.
Why, thank you, Rachel. Yes, I'm Donna Miller. I am Chief Visionary Officer and founder at C3 Workplace and Donna Miller Business Growth Consulting, where for the last 30 years, we've been helping companies to accelerate their growth by providing advisory and support services around operations, biz dev, finance, and basically we allow growing teams to focus on that which truly drives the business forward. And our clients know that by bringing us in, we're going to build efficient, integrated systems that they can execute on or we can help execute on. But really what it's about is building that platform for growth, helping companies to build the systems and the processes they need to be able to scale and build companies that run and grow without them involved in every little detail. Oh, it took me a while to get there. And we are joined in this episode by the fabulous Christine Bongard. Christine, tell our audience about how fabulous you are and what you do.
I'm fabulous.
She is.
Christine Bongard here, and I am CEO and founder of the WIT Network. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. I would say I am a multi-time entrepreneur, and I am also a fierce advocate for women in the workplace. That kind of both of those things kind of came together over the past 30 years and gave me the experience and the skills and the passion to found the WIT Network, which is a global network for women. And I love it so much. We provide all levels of support, whether it's education, mentorship, networking, connections, really this safe haven for women to come in and find everything they need to help them scale their careers. And over the last 7 years, we have built the network up to over 15,000 women in 82 countries.
Holy
And
moly.
that's something that, I'm really, really proud of.
And it's women in technology, and some of your springboard was your partnership. You had a position at Microsoft, and I believe that this also kind of was born out of that. Your role as a strategic partnership developer, I believe.
That's right. I was on the partner advisory board for Microsoft for about 15 years and built up such a great network for myself.
Clearly.
Community. And that's really, that was the springboard for it. They asked me to help, Microsoft asked me to help them plan a luncheon for women. This was about, 15 years ago. And we were just sort of like, why do we only get one luncheon a year? More support than that. So that's kind of really what started the WIT Network.
So
Awesome.
Christine, you're obviously very accomplished. You said you're a serial entrepreneur. What, has it always been a straight shot to the top? Like, tell me about that.
I wish. No. Looking back at both entrepreneur experiences, there were definitely a lot of ups and downs. And I don't know that when you go into it, you're thinking about that. You're thinking about, hey, what goes up must come down. And there were definitely years where things were great. And then there were years where things were really, really hard. You know what? We really wouldn't trade that process and those experiences, because from that, I learned so much. I grew as a leader and I grew as a business person. Being an entrepreneur, I think the crux of it is really about learning how to deal with people and manage people well. You need to obviously have a good product or good service, but it's really about relationships with your employees, with your customers, with your partners, with your board of directors. And so all of those ups and downs led me to really learning how to utilize those relationships for successful outcomes, whether it was a good year or a bad year.
Mm.
So what I've learned as an entrepreneur is the high, like it's almost like gambling, except hopefully statistically you do better. The highs are really, really high,
Yeah.
and the lows are really, really low. And I think the reason a lot of people don't do it is because though, I mean, when you're winning, you're doing great. But those lows, they hurt. And so,
Yeah.
now when we come out of them, the ones that continue, look back, learn, adjust, get up and do it again. But
Yeah.
how do you deal with the lows when you're in them? Because they suck. At least in my experience.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really do.
the first few are especially hard, but
Mhm.
here's a couple of points I would say that what I've learned as an entrepreneur is one, when the highs are really great, yes, enjoy them, but then also just be mindful that it's temporary.
Prepare for the low. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you have to enjoy it and that's great, but know that it's a moment in time and that things are going to change. And don't think that that means it's all up from there. It isn't,
Mhm.
right?
You got
Number
you got to
two,
taper expectations both ways.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't mean don't celebrate, but it just means, hold your
Mhm.
horses a little bit there. I would say in the lows, what's really important is kind of similar advice is to remember that it's only temporary.
Mhm.
It is a moment in time, and I think when I find I'm in a low period or having a struggle with something with business, first thing I try to do is take some deep breaths, but then also figure out like how do I yes, there's an obstacle, there's a downturn, but like how do I use that time to
Mhm.
grow in the moment and like take a look like, hey, let's dissect what's going on here. Is
Mhm.
it something we did? Is it external? How can we learn from it? If we're in a downtime, like how can we use this time to focus on things internally to make ourselves better for when things come out? There's always a way to keep moving and keep positive even when things are in a downturn.
I think I love that you said that because I think it's about not letting it become a reflection of you, like not getting emotional. And when it's your business or your project or you're leading people and having to do layoffs or whatever, it becomes an emotional reaction. I don't know how you would help that. And so I feel like it's
Yeah.
being as logical as possible
Exactly.
is really important.
Which,
I
is oh, go ahead. I'm sorry,
No,
Donna.
no, no. I do. What I was thinking when you were talking was, this too shall pass. You
Yeah.
had a banner month, this too shall pass. You had your worst month ever, this too shall pass. But what it made me think of was, as entrepreneurs, we're risk takers.
Mhm.
And the risk is not only in the finance, there's risk and there's a pretty good upside too. But I think what occurred to me during this podcast, which I've actually never thought of before, is there's a ton of emotional risk.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my God.
because,
Yeah.
right, because I mean, at this point, this business is my
You
third
almost have to
child.
harden yourself
Yeah,
to it. I have
yeah.
to
Yeah.
like put up. That's why I was like, "Oh my God, something amazing happened. Why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, "Eh." Something terrible happened. Why didn't you tell me? I'm like, "Eh." Like I just
Eh,
gotta keep my bubble. Like,
no, and I like, it's so interesting this conversation, Donna. I'm an emotional person. I am an emotional leader. I have high EQ, and you know
yes,
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But
you
I
have to.
love what Rachel said about you have to remain logical. And that's something that I have been trying to focus on and develop as a leader is keeping that logical sense about me as I'm making decisions and things are coming forward. I'll give you a great example. I'm sure you've talked about this with a lot of guests about fail fast. And that's something that I think could be hard for entrepreneurs
Mhm.
because when you
Mm.
develop an idea or you put a product out there
Oh,
and
too
it's
much.
not doing well and it's hurting you and you're struggling and sometimes people just hang on to it for the sake of like, well, I've invested in it and I have to just keep going and that kind of can be when you're an emotional leader, then you can kind of do that, right? So I've had to pull myself out of the business emotionally and look at things that aren't working and say, is it okay to just stop and pull the plug on that, right? And I think that for me has been an interesting learning process, how to do that, how to just admit this isn't working out, we're failing here, and it's
Mhm.
okay to stop. We
Let
don't have to
go,
keep
admit it.
investing in it, you know?
It's
That is
so
such great leadership to
well.
model that for your people.
Mhm. And I think it goes through our whole lives, right? So I don't know, but I always worry about things. And then as soon as they happen, I'm over it. I'm like, it happened. Now we'll deal with the fallout. And I remember a couple of years back, we had a huge client that was just there was an acquisition involved, their culture got really bad. Every time I would get an email from one of these people, my stomach for months would just
Mm.
plummet. It made me miserable. It took all my time and effort. Every fire was not looked at because I had to focus on this. And I held on for so long thinking I could fix it. And in hindsight, when it finally crumbled to the ground because there was no saving it, it was like a weight off my shoulders. And to this day,
Yeah.
I actually had somebody from that company come back and say, "Hey, do you want to work with us again?" I said, "Nope."
Yeah.
Don't care how much money it is because, like, I wish I had let go 3 months in instead of holding on for a year. And like, it's a good lesson in general when you've got to do something in your personal life. Just get it done and
Yeah.
move on. I love that.
Yeah. So, you wish you had, Rachel. So, Christine, as you look back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think two things that come to mind for that. One is I really didn't understand the importance of having good financial acumen in the business. And so I wish, and I'm sharing that because I think it's something that really entrepreneurs need to carve out that time to and
Mhm.
make the space for understanding financial statements and stock options and all those things in the business that you may not have had to touch when you were at a different role, or you were part of a company may not have touched you, but when you're the entrepreneur and you're responsible, you really really need to have a good handle on those things. And so I think over the years, I wish I had done that earlier,
Mhm.
because I definitely found myself in negotiating contracts for things that I didn't have the upper hand because I didn't
Mhm.
understand it as much. And those were lessons. Those were things that I had to go through to learn. So I would really advise that. And then second, I wish I had a coach earlier on, worked with a coach earlier on for my career. Have one now. I have had one for years, and that whole experience is just so helpful to me. Working with somebody who can be a mirror for you,
Mhm.
that's part of our conversations are when she regurgitates back to me and says, "Here's what I heard," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Really?"
Oh, crap.
You
Yeah.
know, and I mean, I get the best ideas from
Mhm.
myself through those conversations because she dissects what I'm talking about, and I can't do that for myself.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
yeah, yeah.
I love it. And so, like, you don't need to have one all the time, but you definitely should try to work with them every 6 months for, a
Mhm.
year and a half, two
Yeah.
years. Like, bring them in, have them help you out, and then take a break, and then bring them back in. And I really recommend that. That's just been so helpful to me.
I agree. I often say I'm a recovered micromanager, and there was no way I could have went from who I was to who I am without a lot of people. And it wasn't one. I have found that those coaches, they have a purpose, and sometimes they have a shelf life. And
Yes. Yes.
then it's time to make a change. And even in my coaching and consulting, I mean, I know that I don't want to work with someone forever. I want to come
Mhm.
in, do what we're doing, and if we have something else to work on, great. And as far as the finance goes, we talked about the emotions and the ups and downs and making those emotional decisions. But what I was thinking also was what we have today that I don't recall having to the extent that we have it now 20 years ago or 25 years ago. We have such great data dashboards.
Mhm.
So if we can, at our wise age now, combine that focused data with intuition and leadership that has now been honed, that's like a combined superpower.
I
So
agree.
and it helps to take some of the emotion out of those decisions.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
It
Agreed.
it really does. Like when you have to make those hard decisions. looking at the bottom line. And here's, in when you're managing people, but I just had this conversation with a manager the other day who had to let someone on their team go, and they kept saying, "Oh, the person will recover. They'll do better. They'll do this." And like it wasn't going to happen. And I said, "You have one more chance to make this position work. You can do it with we wanted to promote someone into the position. You can do it with this person or you can keep this person. What's going to make it work?" And she's like, "Oh, hands down that person." I'm like, "Then there's no room for the person who's failing." Like so
Right.
like looking at the hard data of like what is going to make you successful in these two areas takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example.
But
I'm
it's
I'm reading a book at the moment called Necessary Endings.
ooh.
Oh, yes. Yes,
It's
yes.
very good. It's all about pruning. And you talked about um I forget, you said fire, hire slow. I always say hire slow, fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If the person's the wrong person in the position, then
Yeah.
in
Not good for anybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let
Exactly.
me give you another spin on that necessary ending. So, in preparing for this, I thought about my different experiences out there in the world. And I found myself at one point, not when I was an entrepreneur, but I worked for a big tech company. And I found myself in a situation where I was not respected
Mm.
and not revered or celebrated, in my role. And let's face it, that happens.
Yeah.
Work your tail off, and I want to raise it because I feel like it's out there and it happens. And you work your tail off, you're loyal, you're committed, you do the hours, all of that, and then you're queued up and ready for a promotion. And then what happens? They bring somebody else in from the outside, a friend of the CEO or whatever, and there you go, right? Push down. And that happened to me, and this happens everywhere, and it's not personal, it's business, and, you all kind of have to be prepared for that. But the lesson I want to share is that I was devastated. I
Mhm.
really was, and I did all the right things. I made my work visible. I met with everybody in the C-suite to make sure they knew what I was doing and what I was capable of and how committed I was. And when that happened, I just it really hurt. But I
Did you
tried to
fight
correct it,
afterwards?
huh?
Did you fight afterwards?
I did a little bit. I said I am gonna because I feel like
You
I don't
should,
wanna
yeah.
just quit. I want them to hear why I'm upset. And I met with as many C-suite people that would listen to me,
Mhm.
and I made my case. And I met with the hiring person, the leader that made the decision to bring in the friend or whatnot. And, so I did my due diligence on
Mhm.
that. At the end of the day, they stuck with their decision and I left. I used my voice
Good.
say I'm not going to be a part of this. Like I don't deserve that. This isn't a place I want to be at. And somebody told me a quote that has stayed with me. Go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. You know,
Ooh.
yeah, I
I
left there
love
as
that.
fast as I could, and similar to you, Rachel, where you were saying like as soon as that project was done, you felt this weight come off
Oh,
your chest. As
mhm.
soon as I quit, all
It's
the
like getting on the bus the last day of school
anxiety.
for summer vacation.
Yeah,
That's what the feeling is.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think necessary endings, Donna, like that was a necessary ending. I
Mhm.
know it's a hard job market and it's tough to, go look for a new
Mhm.
job. You don't need to, if you're ever in that situation, it's not like you need to do it immediately, but make a plan for it
Mhm.
and get the heck out.
Yeah.
Do it with clients, do it with employees, do it with
Yeah.
relationships. Do
Yes.
it when, if you're the manager and somebody's struggling, like just you got to pull the trigger. Like you've got
Yeah.
to, maybe that's not a good analogy. You got to get it done. Sorry. And so
Right.
let's scratch that. But
Right.
you've got to just do it.
Yeah.
And the anxiety goes away. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was the right decision.
Yeah, and then, here I am full time running the WIT network now as a result of that, and
Yeah.
I never look back.
It's
Awesome.
amazing.
Well, speaking of necessary endings, we are out of time.
But we can't just keep talking
Yeah.
on and on.
Well, we could, but so Christine, I love everything you shared with us, and I hadn't thought about the impact of the ups and downs in so long, but boy, I do remember that emotion. But
Mhm.
so, how can our audience reach you if they'd like to learn more about you or the WIT Network?
Yeah, sure. Well, our URL is thewitnetwork.com, so that's pretty easy. And I'm on LinkedIn, Christine Bongard. So please, they can connect with me there, and love to chat with anybody who wants to talk about this.
Awesome. Well, we thank you very much. And we thank you, our audience members, for joining us today. And we want to encourage you to embrace the concept of failing forward, because it really is how you get from here to there. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.